Hi, guys. Welcome back to the Soul Food Podcast, a safe space where we talk about God, theology, the Bible, and the Christian life in general. I'm your host, Noma. On today's episode, I will be teaching on what the signs of Jesus' second coming are. Due to the length of my notes, I will split this episode into two. There are several passages in the Bible that teach about this topic. However, for this episode, I will use the Lord's own words as recorded in Matthew chapter 24 from verse 1 to 8, which says, "As Jesus was leaving the temple grounds, his disciples pointed out to him the various temple buildings. But he responded, 'Do you see all these buildings? I tell you the truth, they will be completely demolished. Not one stone will be left on top of another.' Later, Jesus sat on the Mount of Olives. His disciples came to him privately and said, 'Tell us, when will all this happen? What sign will signal your return and the end of the world?' Jesus told them, 'Do not let anyone deceive you. For many will come in my name, claiming, I am the Messiah. They will deceive many. And you will hear of wars and threats of wars, but don't panic. Yes, these things must take place, but the end won't follow immediately. Nation will go to war against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in many parts of the world. But all this is only the first of the birth pains, with more to come.'" The teachings of Jesus in these verses are commonly referred to as end-time prophecies, which is a reference to the time period just before his return and the end of the present world as we know it. I'm so glad that the disciples asked Jesus these questions and the Lord answered them with such clarity. The first sign that Jesus spoke about was deception, specifically the deception that will come from people impersonating him by falsely claiming to be the Messiah. Now, seeing as Jesus Christ is no longer walking this earth like he did between 6 and 4 BC, you would think it would be impossible for anyone to fall for this form of deception that will come through impersonation. But the Lord makes it clear that many people will be deceived by these pretenders in verse 4 of Matthew chapter 24. What do these Christ impersonators look like in this day and age? Today, we have many wrong depictions of Jesus that have and are gaining more following than the real Jesus. For example, we have the New Age portrayal of Jesus, the Islamic view of Jesus, the Black Hebrew Israelite view of Jesus, to name a few. One thing that these belief systems have in common is that they strip Jesus of his deity as the Christ. The Bible refers to such worldviews as anti-Christ, which means against Christ. Holding on to the wrong portrayal of Jesus might not sound that bad if you are new to the Christian faith. However, the biggest danger that these impersonators pose is that the hope, trust, and faith placed in them by their followers can only provide a false sense of security and assurance. It's not real, it's not genuine. It is important to believe in the right Jesus as he is portrayed in the Bible as the door of salvation, the source of real hope and genuine faith, the guarantor for forgiveness of sins, the only way to God the Father, and eternity in heaven. We can only partake in the benefits achieved on our behalf and conferred on us by Christ because we have been saved by grace alone, through faith alone, in the true and living Christ alone. For further reading on this topic of the right Saviour, check out my blog series titled Who is Jesus? I'll put a link in the description box. The next sign of Jesus' prophecy about the future focuses on wars, and that's from verse 6 to 7. And you will hear of wars and threats of wars, but don't panic. Yes, these things must take place, but the end won't follow immediately. Nation will go to war against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. As most of us know, in early 2022, the war between Russia and Ukraine broke out. There has been many casualties since then, unfortunately. And on a global level, energy and food supply have been negatively impacted. For those of you who don't know, Russia and Ukraine are two major suppliers of both energy, food, and fertilizer materials. And the ongoing war between these two countries has caused disruption in supply for both the Western world and beyond. As a result, many European nations have shifted away from relying on Russian gas, causing them to look for gas elsewhere, mainly to the Middle East, Asia, and parts of Africa, which has led to the high prices of oil and gas in the last 2 years. In terms of food supply, with both Russia and Ukraine being major exporters of agricultural fertilizers, the disruption to global food chains drove up prices to all-time highs, fueling a cost of living crisis globally. To quote Laura Wellesley, a senior research fellow in the Environment and Society program, it's impossible to separate the food crisis from the continuing energy crisis. High fuel prices drive up fertilizer prices and transport costs, which in turn squeeze farmers' profits while increasing the price of food for consumers. More recently, a war broke out between the nation of Israel and Palestine. Again, there's been massive casualties on both sides. This Israeli-Palestinian war also poses a bigger threat of oil prices going up higher, which will no doubt affect global food supply further and lead to further economic instability for the world. Since these two major wars broke out, there's been a looming threat of World War III breaking out, which is terrifying to think about. But Jesus tells us that we shouldn't panic because these things must take place, but the end won't follow immediately. Jesus then predicts that there will be famines and earthquakes in many parts of the world, but all this is only the first part of the birth pains, with more to come, as he said from verse 7 to 8. Since biblical times, there's always been famines and natural disasters. But in these end times, we will see and are seeing an increase in frequency, magnitude, and devastation. According to Wikipedia, there was a total of 17,552 earthquakes ranging from a magnitude of 4.0 to 6.9 worldwide last year. So far in 2024, there has been 7,235 earthquakes worldwide with the same magnitude range. According to the Global Report on Food Crises, nearly 282 million people in 59 countries and territories experienced high levels of acute hunger in 2023, a worldwide record increase of 24 million from the previous year. Since 2020, the number of people facing acute food insecurity, also known as famine, has remained persistently high. Some of the key factors of food crises include conflict, extreme weather events such as severe floods, droughts, storms, wildfires, etc., and economic shocks. The current situation in Gaza accounts for 80% of those facing imminent famine, along with countries like South Sudan, Burkina Faso, Somalia, and Mali. Organizations like the EU, UNICEF, International Fund for Agricultural Development, etc., are calling for critical, urgent action to be taken in addressing the 59 countries currently experiencing famine. The world might blame all these events on global warming and climate change, but biblical prophecy refers to it as birth pains, which is something that women experience during labor right before they give birth. Jesus clearly states in verse 8 of Matthew 24 that there will be more birth pains to come. We will discuss what those other birth pains that Jesus predicted from verse 9 to 24 will be in the next episode. Thank you all for joining me today. Follow me on Instagram at the_soul_food_podcast to stay connected. Until next time, peace and blessings.